Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us, taking time out of your busy day to spend an hour with us. Welcome to the Doing Business Better with Optimized Invoice Handling from Arrival to Archive presentation. Bit of a mouthful, but hopefully you'll understand why shortly. Just before we begin, I'd like to say a big thank you to the International Accounts Payable professionals for helping us with today's webinar. I know many of you are members, but those of you who are not, it might be worth you having a look at their website. They will be able to help you with your organisation and the challenges that you may well be facing. Just before we go any further, I'd just like to point out that we are at the annual conference, which is being held next week in Birmingham. We have a stand there, so by all means come and speak to us, say hi, and it'd be good to be able to answer any questions you might have in person. So let me just introduce myself and my colleague here from one of our integrated partners, K2. So I'm Steve Ponting, as Matthew said, and with me is Anthony Molyneux of K2. He's a technical specialist, and he'll be handling the second part of the demonstration, showing you the benefits of workflow. So I've introduced myself. It's time for us to learn a little bit about yourselves and our audience today. So over to you, Matthew.
Thank you, Steve. And we'd like to put forward a polling question to our audience where we would like to ask, what is your role in your organization? We've got a number of options available to you, indicating that you are in the accounting area, you are a manager or department head, you are a C-level, this would be senior executive or director, or you're part of the IT function. We'd ask you to go ahead and take a moment, select the radio button that best represents your response. Be sure to click on that submit button. We'll collect those over the next couple of seconds and then display the results out so that you can see the folks that have joined you and the demographics of our session attendees today. I'd also like to take a moment to let all of our attendees know that if you have questions throughout today's broadcast, we do encourage you to type those into the chat area on the left-hand side of your screen. We'll be collecting those and responding to some of them behind the scenes if possible, as well as fielding some Q&A near the end of today's session if we have time. At this time, I'd like to give notice that we will be closing down the poll, and we'll bring those results up on screen. And Steve, you should have those results showing up there in the bar chart today, indicating that we do have a large makeup of IT professionals, it looks like. But we'll turn things back over to you. Okay,
thank you very much. Yes, it's good to see that we have such a diverse audience. Accountants, obviously, department heads, a good number there of C-level and directorships, and also IT functions. So welcome everybody, and thank you very much for taking your time to fill in that poll there. That's very useful to us. So let me just move on now and introduce ABBYY as a company. We were founded in 1989, and since then we have grown into what is now a global business, as you can see represented by the dots on the map there. We've got about 1,200 employees worldwide, and around a third of those, about 400, are developers and scientists who spend their time developing our products and making sure that they're not only fit for purpose but best of breed. We've got 13 offices around the world. Those are based in the US, Europe, Australia, Russia, Japan, and Taiwan. And we also have a very, very established partner network. We have partners operating over 150 countries and somewhere in the region of 30 million users of both our desktop products, our engine product, and also our integrated products. So let's take a little look at what we actually do. So as I said, we've got around 400 developers who spend their time working on our core technologies. And those technologies are optical character recognition, so reading printed text, intelligent character recognition, which is the detection of handwritten characters, so where you filled in a questionnaire or you get those little boxes with what we call combs, the little lines between that you fill in handwriting. That's intelligent character recognition. And also adaptive document recognition technology and layout analysis. Now what does that mean? Well, that is the ability to effectively look at the content and style of a document and make informed decisions based on that content and layout. So we can look at a letter and decide that it is actually a letter, look at an invoice and tell that it's an invoice, and make informed decisions around business rules associated with those different types of documents. So perhaps route them to different people and carry out different extraction processes on them, because the information you want to take from a letter is very different from the information you may want to take from, for example, an invoice or a contract. So the purpose of today is looking at these technologies and how they can benefit the payable process. And that involves many different parts of our technology. Obviously, we're looking at the recognition of the invoice as an invoice. We're then looking at extracting that data, and we're looking at exporting the information that we have extracted into other line of business solutions. If we move on, you can see that who uses our software and what is it used for. Well, recently we completed an installation of a project with the second largest auto manufacturer in Europe, a very, very successful project that was involved recognizing and extracting data from their pre-release documentation. So all of the documents that are needed in order to release the vehicle to a customer. But moving on from that, you can see that we have success in the accounts payable arena with people like Beneficia Football Club, the ABBYY Group, the Grand Charity, which I believe is part of the Masons, and Adactus Housing Group. So that's accounts payable, but we also have success in the banking sector, forms capture in terms of things like questionnaires or other form-based data capture, and also archiving as well. There you can see we've got names like Deloitte, PwC, and the BBC. So I think it's time for our next question. Matthew, please.
Thank you, Steve. And this time around, we'd like to ask from our audience members, how much automation have you pursued to date? Got options there ranging from we process everything manually, we scan and archive, but nothing more. We have an automated system in place, or I'm not sure what automation is. So go ahead and select one of those options if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us. We'll put those results up on screen so you'll understand a little bit more about those joining you on the line. And again, a reminder that if you have questions for Steve or for Anthony throughout today's broadcast, please feel free to type those questions into the chat area. Or if you need assistance with anything, you can also reach out to us through there as well. We would like to give notice here in just a moment that we will close down the poll. So if you'd like to get your vote in, please click on the radio button and then click Submit. And at this time, I will go ahead and close that down, bring those results up, and we'll turn things back over to you, Steve.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Well, it's good to see that most, in fact, all of you know what automation is. We didn't get any responses to the I'm not sure what automation is. That's great. I can see that a fair number of you process things manually, and obviously that's part of the topic today, is to address how we can change that and how changing that will impact your business for the better. The highest percentage there scan and archive, but don't do anything with it in terms of extraction, and also just over a third of you have some kind of automation in place. And that reflects really the results of a recent survey that we did in conjunction with Paystream Advisors. We polled somewhere around 300 accounts payable professionals, and more than 50%, 52% in fact, listed handling of paper invoices as their #1 invoice management challenge. And that was very, very closely followed by manual data entry and inefficient processes. And you can see that I've highlighted the top answer there on the slide. And if we look at the top three, you'll see that we have manual data and inefficient process, and also manual routing of invoices for approval. You'll see in the K2 portion of the demonstration how routing and approval can be automated, and automated in a very, very simple and effective way. So let's look at why we need accounts payable automation. Well, it's fairly straightforward. As you saw from the last slide, there are a lot of challenges and pain associated with processing invoices manually. And ABBYY and K2's solution for accounts payable automation allows companies to have business critical data at their fingertips. What does that mean? Well, it means that rather than having to touch lots and lots of pieces of paper, we can handle the extraction and the classification, the identification of invoices automatically, and we can drill down and extract the information that we need very, very easily and very quickly without having to have a person present to actually thumb through each page, look at the invoice number, the supplier data, and check that it's as it should be. We can do all of that electronically, and by doing that electronically, we're able to integrate that information effectively into other systems, into your ERP system or any other line of business system that you may have. And why would you want to do that? Well, there are many benefits to doing that, and you can see that one of those is to improve the cash flow and the performance management. Okay, cash flow is very, very important within a business, but so is reducing the manual process and also removing any error-prone processing. The last thing that you want as a business is to be hit by late payment penalties or to not be able to make the most of any opportunity for early payment discounts, and automation can certainly help you with that. But it can also improve the quality of the data extracted. Where you're not keying information from an invoice, where you're extracting it electronically, what you're doing is you're improving your capture rates, you're improving the quality of the information that you're lifting from that paper. And that's going to improve the quality of the reports. You'll be able to report on incoming invoices and supplier data a lot more quickly and efficiently by doing it electronically than by having a team of accounts clerks entering information manually. And what does that mean? Well, that means that you're able to improve the relationship you may have with your suppliers. By moving information around your business in an effective manner, what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to respond more quickly to problems that you may have, and by doing so, the risk of an escalating process is reduced. And of course, the final point to mention here is because you're not handling paper, you're not having to store paper, and by not storing paper, you're saving money in terms of physical storage. So let's look at a case study that we recently implemented. And you can see that the business had somewhere in the region of 1,000 employees. And I know that this won't match all of you guys in terms of your business and what your business looks like. But hopefully some of these points will be familiar, and you can draw comparisons to your business. So as I said, the company, an international company with just over 1,000 employees processing 2,000 plus invoices per week. Okay, what were their challenges? Well, 50% of the employees' time was spent locating invoices. That's a lot of time out of a 37.5-hour week, 40-hour week to spend actually looking for your data. And then once that data had been located, 4 or more weeks were required to actually process that, and that's the point of the invoice into the business through approval, through all the processing stages, to archive. Okay, so what did ABBYY and K2 do about this? Well, we implemented a scanning and automation process. So the electronic invoices and the paper invoices, where necessary, were scanned, and they were fed through an automated data extraction process. What do we mean by automated data extraction? Well, what we mean is that where we had paper invoices, they were turned into a digital image through scanning. Where we had electronic invoices that were supplied by PDF, those documents were fed straight into the system, and they were identified as invoices through a step we call classification, and then the relevant information was pulled or extracted from those images. And that would be things like the invoice number, the supplier data, invoice date, totals, VAT figures, for example. And then we implemented an approval workflow. So I'm sure within all of your businesses, when an invoice is received, you make decisions based around the value of that invoice, based around who that invoice was addressed to, in terms of who needs to see that invoice to approve it. Well, by having an automated approval workflow, there is no need to manually move paper around your business anymore. It's now as simple as firing an email or visiting a website to see which invoices you need to approve and clicking a couple of buttons to approve those invoices. So the time saving and also the reduction in risk of lost copies and things like that are greatly improved. So what were the results of this? Well, on average 50% saving in terms of processing time, and also a greater transparency in terms of the financial controls. So what does that mean in real terms? Well, we improve the quality of the data, we improve the quality of the reporting, and by improving those two elements, we improved overall control. And you'll see that from the next question, I want to look at the number of invoices you process a week, because this has got a great bearing on how much of a benefit you can see from automation. Obviously, the more invoices you're putting through your business, the greater the benefit. So Matthew, if you would please. As I said, really what I'm looking for on the answer to this is just to see what your pain is in terms of the number of invoices that you're processing per week. Okay, so just as we did before, if you would kindly select the value that represents the number of invoices you currently process per week and submit those results, that would be great.
Hello, Steve. This is Matthew. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Matthew. Hello.
All right. I apologize. Got disconnected there for a moment. I see we have the polling question up for our audience members, so we're going to ask you to go ahead and select from the options there to give us your results.
Okay. Thank you very much for responding to that. This is looking good. So I can see that the majority of you guys are processing less than 1,000 invoices a week, with the second highest number being 2,000 to 4,000. These are good numbers, and although you may think that less than 1,000 invoices a week can handle that process manually, you'll see that from the next slide that actually even low volumes can benefit from automation. And this is a simple slide that just explains what automation is. So you can see here that we've got paper invoices that are coming into the system, but we also have e-invoices coming in. Now those e-invoices may be coming in through an FTP site, file transfer site. They may be coming in through PDF, so they could be being emailed to you in PDF format, or they may be coming in as an XML file from another through another system. Either way, no matter how the data arrives, whether it's physical paper or an electronic file, it goes through the extraction and validation process. And that validation and extraction process is handled by ABBYY through our FlexiCapture for Invoices solution. And then once that data has been validated and all of the extracted information prepared, we would then pass that as an XML file through to the K2 system. And the K2 system, that allows for routing and approval. So as we discussed earlier on, it may be that you have business rules based around the value of an invoice or a particular project or a particular addressee, and based around those criteria you would have different approvers within your business. Well, the K2 system is intelligent enough to have those rules applied and automatically route those invoices to the relevant people, and at that point they can be reviewed. They can have values assigned to them, such as invoice nominal ledger or general ledger coding, and they can be approved, or they can be moved to an exception queue for further examination. But either way, once the issues have been resolved, if there are any issues, they would then be pushed through for payment and archival. And if we look at our next slide, we have one last question for you, and then we'll move through into the live demonstration.
Question we're asking, which ERP or accounting system do you use? So please go ahead, take a moment there, give us your responses, and we'll be able to bring those forward in just a moment as well. And we'll give everyone just a notice here that we will close down the poll in just a second. So please go ahead and click submit if you have not already. You do have the option to select more than one on this one, as you may be using multiple systems, so feel free to do that. And we'll close out those results and bring them up on screen now. So Steve, you should have those showing on your screen. I
do, yes, and I can see we have a real mixture in terms of the ERP and accounting systems that the audience are using. I can see that we've got a good number of SAP users out there, or SAP users, some Oracle, some MS Dynamics. A high proportion use Sage, but by far the largest proportion use Other. And I'm now wishing that perhaps we'd added a few more points so we knew what those others were. But either way, and this is very, very important to note, that no matter what back-end system you guys use, or ERP system or accounting system that you guys use, the ABBYY and K2 solution will be able to integrate because we use open technology. So we're able to export in many, many formats, plain text files, XML, and directly populate databases, and the same is true with the K2 solution as well. And what I'd like to do now is just take a few moments to show you with a live demonstration of how the FlexiCapture for Invoices product works. And what I'll do is, once I've taken you through that and we've got to the point of export, I'll hand over to Anthony, who's going to show you the approval and workflow process. So hopefully you'll find this next stage interesting. Okay, so hopefully you can now see my desktop. I've already imported the images in, or scanned the images in, and as we've touched on earlier on, we can do that in a manner of ways. It could be from a shared network folder that and multifunction device is scanning into. It could be from watching a file transfer folder, or from an email inbox. Alternatively, using a tool we have which is called our scanning station, you can directly connect the scanner to the software and pull the images in directly. But no matter which way the images arrive, this process will remain exactly the same. Okay? So you can see on the screen here that I have two different invoices, and the first step that I'd like you to notice is that we've classified them as a European invoice. And this is what I was talking about in terms of the classification. So we've looked at not only the layout but also the content of the image, of the document, and we've decided that it is an invoice and it's a European invoice. And through that we have applied a certain set of rules, and you can see that there's a little red flag against it and a status is set to rejected. And that is because they don't meet certain business rules that we've applied to these invoices. So let's go ahead and open one up. Okay, and you'll see it's a very, very simple interface here. We've got an image on the right hand side, and on the left hand side here we've got a pane which has our fields, and also at the bottom we've got our rules and the areas in which the rules are not met. Excuse me. There are two different types of rules. There's the red flag rules and there's an amber rule. A red flag is a hard stop. The invoice cannot progress any further through the process as long as there's an outstanding red flag. However, an amber flag is more of a warning. So the invoice will be able to progress, but it's going to be an exception. It will need further attention down the line. And you can see that in the top left hand corner here, currently highlighted, we have a status value which is rejected. And it's rejected because the field value, the country, is not populated. Okay, so what we can do is, using our little drop down box here, we can very quickly and easily select the country GB, and you'll notice that already we've moved to exception. So this invoice could continue through the process as an exception, but we don't want it to do that. What we want it to do is we want to validate this particular invoice. So let's look at our warning. Vendor should be found in the database. What does that mean? Well, if I select the vendor name field here, you can see over on the image we've got a section that's highlighted in yellow, which is the area in which the system has looked for and found the name of the business Creative Awards. But in this case, it's not found it in a way that has allowed it to be matched to our vendor database. So we're going to remove that field, and we're going to find a better match. And we can select here Creative Awards Limited. And you can see now that that vendor has been populated, the fields have turned green, and if I scroll to the top, that error has now changed to a total amount check. So let's move down our image and have a look at these totals. So further down the screen, we've now got our business unit detected, our vendor unit detected, and all OK. invoice number and invoice date has all been recognized and found correctly. It knows it's an invoice and not a credit note. It's found no other data. And it's found the total on the invoice. But we need to have a look at the other amounts. The net amount field has not been populated. So again, just using our drop-down box, you can very, very easily select the net value, and you'll see that now the status has turned green for valid. So that invoice is now ready to move further down through the chain. It's ready to be extracted. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that those changes don't need to be made manually again. And this can be done very simply by selecting this train button. And what do we mean by training? Well, by training, what we're doing is we are associating the changes I've just made to this particular vendor. So the next time that the system sees a Creative Awards Limited invoice, it will know to look in this area here for the name, this area for an IBAN number and bank account details, this area for total amounts, this area for the business unit, date and invoice number. And what we're doing is by training, we're reducing the number of times that we will have to have manual intervention on these invoices. And in doing so, we're making the system more and more effective. So I'll close that one down and save the changes. And you'll see that this one now no longer has a red flag against it, and the status has changed to valid. So let's look at another invoice. Okay, so this one is an Incisive Media invoice. And again, we've got an issue, it's not detected the country field, but we can easily select that. And now you can see that it's rejected on the basis that the business unit has not been found. It can't find the business unit. So what I can do is I can click my Find button and actually pick that information up from my vendor database. I can manually find that information if I want to. But ideally what we want to do is we want to have this invoice find the information. And you can see it's because it's got a name in here as well as an address. It doesn't directly meet the rules associated with that particular business unit. But the vendor ID has been picked up. We know exactly who the invoices come from. We've got an invoice number, we've got the invoice date, and we've got all of the total amounts. We have a rule here we need to check with the IBAN number. So if we scroll down and have a look, you can see that we've picked up the IBAN number, so it's not a detection issue and not an extraction issue. So let's click on this rule, and we can go here and we can see that we have the IBAN number highlighted, and very simply we can see that it's picked up an O instead of a 0, and it's very, very easy to amend this. We can do this on the fly, either by overkeying, or as you can see, I'm able to detect that from a drop-down box. Okay, so that has corrected that information there. Now, what we want to do is we want to avoid having to intervene manually in the future with this particular invoice. So we've picked up the vendor and the business unit information, but what we want to do is we want to amend our master data so that we know that if we get an invoice addressed UK Limited, Colin Miller, and the full address, that we don't want to have manual intervention anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this particular invoice from valid, and you can see that I have three options here. I can choose it valid, exception, or rejected. In this case, I'm going to choose it as an exception, and I'm going to choose that there was no supplier data. But I could just as easily overkey that and put no vendor data. And what we'll do is once we've done that, you'll see that as soon as I save the changes, that this will update at the top of the screen to European invoice and to an exception. And that is as far as the process needs to go within ABBYY. What we have done within the ABBYY FlexiCapture for Invoices tool is we have addressed the fields. We've identified that all of the fields are correct. We've been able to extract all of the meaningful data, business unit, vendor data, invoice numbers, invoice dates, total amounts, tax amounts, etc. And what we're now going to do is pass that information over to the K2 system for approval within your business. And that's very easy. I've finished, so I close the task, and those documents are now ready for export. So I'll hand you now over to my colleague Anthony, who will take you through the K2 workflow element.
Thank you very much, Steve. Yes, I'm going to take you through the K2 workflow element of this. So basically what K2 does is we provide software that allows you to automate your business applications. And really 4 elements that make up our business applications. First and foremost and most important is workflow. So this is processing of tasks from user to user. Second of all is our forms, so how our users interact with our sort of workflow processes. Then we have reporting, so using the data to understand what is going on with our processes to allow us to make better business decisions. And then finally, sort of data, so integrating with your line of business systems to allow us to process these business applications. So in terms of the demonstration I'm going to about to give, we have created a system that has picked up these 2 invoices that sort of ABBYY has now processed and initiated a workflow process for these invoices. Has utilized the extracted data to allow us to make a business decision within our process. For example, if we had an exception like in one of those invoices, our process would go down the exception path and be sent out to somebody to deal with it. Whereas if we had a valid invoice, it would then go for processing. So what I have in front of me, is the a portal I created. So this is our accounts payable site. This shows us all the sort of invoices that are currently being processed. So at the moment we have 3 active sort of processes. This creative awards is our one of which we've just uploaded. We also have our completed processes, and one of them is this incisive media, which is the one that we rejected. So we can actually go and look at the process behind the scenes. So if we look at our incisive media, we can have a graphical view of the process and the process flow. And because our invoices labeled it as an exception, we went down the exception path where we sent out an exception notification to the relevant party to inform them that an exception has occurred. And we've both attached the scanned image to the notification email, as well as use some of the data from the invoice to inform this person that the reason that the exception occurred was that the vendor was not found within the database. So Andrew in this instance would know sort of what to do about this and this exception process. On the other hand, our approval or our process that was valid went down a different route and going to the stage for review notification or reviewing the invoice. And in this instance, we have sent it to our administrator, who is going to be now performing the first level of review. We also built some business rules into the process that allows us to go down different paths dependent on the invoice amount. So my rules that I've created for this process to say that if our invoice value is greater than 1,000, it will go to a second level of approval, and if it's greater than 5,000, it will go to a third level of approval. Now, this is my task list that allows me to see any tasks that have been assigned to me by my workflow process. Okay, so I can come in here and open up my task, and as we can see, this is our Creative Awards invoice, along with all the data that is extracted. So the data on the left is the information that was extracted by ABBYY into an XML file, and we've now consumed that within the workflow process. So I have all the information available to me at this point to allow me to make my decision. And my role is to sort of review it and then take an action. So approve it or reject it. Approve it will move the process on to the next stage and apply the business rules. Reject it could go to another step in the process where maybe we reprocess the invoice or something along those lines. Okay. We can also maybe set the priority of this. So the priority could determine how fast we push this process from one end of the system to the other. So maybe I can change my process to a medium. I'm going to say I'm going to approve it, and this looks okay to me. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll submit that off, and what that will do is we'll go and complete this step within the workflow process. Okay, so if I refresh this view, we can see that it's would have moved on. Let's refresh that. Okay, if I move on to my the view of the process, we can see it's moved on to the finance review step within the process. Okay, and in this case, it's gone to the user Anthony. So coming back into my home page, one of the other things that I said we'd be very interested in looking at is some sort of reporting. So because we are processing these things automatically, there's no longer a manual-based process. We have all that data that is being captured in relation to the process, and this allows us to make our better business decisions. For example, we can see our task loading per employee. So from this, we might then be able to determine who's the best person to send a task to based on their task loading. Or we're looking at our process initiation trends over a period of time. And from this information, we might determine that when we have periods of high task loading, maybe we need additional resources to this task. If we look at invoice processing in more detail, we have that information about how many active or how many completed processes are there, or how many processes of different priority, or where is the processes, and how many processes are sitting at each stage within the workflow process. So we have that immediate visibility and understanding of what is going on with our processes. So we come back to our our home page. Okay, we have somebody else. Now, as I said, this task has been sent to somebody else for processing, and that somebody else is the user Anthony. So I'm going to log on as the user Anthony, so we can see at the top it says Anthony Petro. Okay, under the My Task, there's our invoice number or reference number. It's number 12. Okay, we can have a look at the review details. So the various steps as they go through the process, we capture all that information. So and we can display it here. Once again, this person has the ability to progress this on. So we say, well, yes, I would approve or reject it. So we're happy that this is okay. We're going to approve it, and then we're going to submit that off. Okay, and that moves the process on to the next step. Now, in terms of our scenario, because the value of the process was less than 5,000, okay, the process would have gone through to completion. So as you can see here, it went through the financial review. We can see in terms of the participants that Anthony finished the task at this date and time, and they selected to approve it. And because the value was less than 5,000, it bypassed the CFO review step and went through to completion. And at completion, we can then archive the information, the data, the scanned image, etc. Or we could come in at a later date and for instance, these are my completed processes. I might be interested in seeing what they're about. So Incisive Media, double click on that and have the information at hand to understand what has progressed with my processes. So that brings me to the completion of the K2 side of things. I would like to hand back to Steve to complete the presentation.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Hopefully you found that very, very informative. So what I'd like to do now is open up the floor to some questions, and I can see that we've got a number of questions here ready for me to answer. So I'll just start at the top of the list and work my way down. So I have a question here: can you automatically identify court orders, reminders, bailiff notices, etc.? Yes, we can. Obviously, today's demonstration was very much focused around the accounts payable process. However, the same technology, the same software can be applied to identify, in terms of classify, and also extract data from many, many different types of documentation. I won't go into too much detail about how it's done because of the general audience, but basically what we do is we look for certain identifying terms, particular layout, particularly unique fields within the layout, and we use those to identify the type of data that we're looking at. So we may look for a key term, i.e. a court order or something associated with a court order that would identify that as a court order, and then we can extract the specific information that we want from a court order or from a reminder or from a bailiff note. So yes, the answer to the question is we can classify and extract from many, many different types of documentation. I have another question here from an attendee who joined a little bit later into the session, and wants to know the types of organisations that we have using this software at the moment. So what I'll do is I'll just flick back to an earlier slide, and if I open up this particular slide here, you'll see that we've got organisations within many different markets using our software. So not only have we got the invoice processing being used by people like Benfica Football Club, but we also have many banks, Deutsche Bank, BNP Paribas, Barclays. We've got forms capture, which I mentioned earlier on in terms of things like questionnaires or general data capture forms. People like Europcar, Companies House use our software for capturing the accounts submissions, and we also have archiving projects through people like the NHS, BBC, Deloitte and PwC. So we've got a very, very broad number and a very diverse group of companies that use our software at the moment and use it for many, many different types of projects. They're not all looking to extract the same data, obviously. Companies House would be looking for a very, very different data set to someone like Deutsche Bank, for example. I have a good question here, actually. Is this solution a cloud solution, or does software hardware have to be purchased up front? Well, there's two different answers to this question. Yes, it can be a cloud solution. We don't offer it as a true cloud solution, but the software can be installed in a data center and accessed via the web. So yes, software does need to be purchased, but it doesn't necessarily need to be installed locally. If you have got branch offices or you've got multiple locations, the same instance, the same install can be used across multiple locations. We've got a similar question here to one earlier on. We're not looking at processing invoices. We would like to extract data for specific types of non-invoice documents. Well, I think I covered that off earlier on. It doesn't necessarily need to be invoices that we extract data from. And the same with the workflow that you saw from K2. That doesn't need to apply to an accounts payable process. We've got many customers using it for case management and other uses as well. Do we integrate with Coda? Well, I think I touched on this, that because of the way that we can interchange data, we can actually integrate with almost all platforms. But if you have specific requirements, please do get in touch with us after this webinar, and we can address those directly. Good question here. Can we route different supplier accounts from vendors listed and use custom rules like project codes? Yes, we can. What we can do is, using database lookup in the background, we can route invoices and any other type of document based on certain rule sets, as long as we have a primary key or a reference data set. Then that's absolutely possible, yes. What happens if an invoice number already exists? Well, this is a similar question to the previous one, really. As long as we extract the invoice number and store them somewhere, whether that be within ABBYY or within K2 or within any other system, as long as we have a reference, we can build a rule. whereby we can check that an invoice number exists or doesn't exist. Where an invoice number is unique, the invoice can continue through the process. Where an invoice number has been duplicated, we can trigger an event such as an email within a workflow solution, or as you saw, we can have the invoice set as an exception for manual verification. So yes, if an invoice number exists, we can build rules to handle that scenario. I have a good question here. Do you have a limit on the amount of invoices that can be processed in a month? No is the simple answer to that. Our system is fully scalable. So whether you're processing 300 invoices or 3 million invoices a month, we can build a solution to fit. It's a case of just increasing the hardware platform that the software is installed upon. But no, there's no upper limit. We actually have customers who process in excess of 100 million invoices a year using our technology. Okay, let's look at, is it possible to hook into K2, so wire in a state and have some custom processing execute via .NET assembly and throw up a custom form? Well, I'm going to hand that one over to Anthony, as he's our K2 expert.
I mean, in short, the answer is absolutely yes. And with K2, we also expose our entire functionality through .NET assemblies and sort of web and WCF services. So you'd certainly be able to wire up sort of custom forms, custom APIs to either call into K2 or have K2 call into your external systems.
Okay, thank you very much, Anthony. Okay, let's look at just a couple more questions. We have a question here about how do we handle OCR issues such as misrecognition. Well, I didn't go into this within the demonstration, but there is an additional step that we can include within the invoice processing. Once we have verified that the fields have been recognized and captured, we can go into a stage which we call verification. And what the verification stage does is it shows you a small snippet of the data in context, so you actually see a small snippet of the image and the extracted data. And where characters have been misrecognized, they'll be highlighted in red if there's an uncertainty, and you can very, very easily overkey the data to correct it. So that's carried out using verification. To answer that question for you. I have another question here about multi-page invoices. The answer to the multi-page invoice is very straightforward. Our software looks for header data in terms of supplier name, other vendor information, and also business unit information, and then such as totals and business identification numbers at the bottom of the page, and it uses that to separate multi-page invoices. That's a very, very simplistic view of how it does it. It's actually a little bit more complex than that, but to reassure you that we can support multi-page invoices. In fact, the system is based around the premise that most invoices are 3 pages in length. That's a bit of an assumption, but it works for the process. I think we'll answer just one more, and then we'll move on if that's okay. So I've got a question here. Can we clarify the relationship between K2 and ABBYY? Well, the relationship is such that ABBYY provides the front-end capture solution. So we do all of the data recognition and the scanning. And K2 provides the workflow platform. So they would go through and handle all of the approval and archiving process. Okay, so I think that wraps up for questions. So if I can just move on. I just want to finish off really by saying that a few months ago we carried out a poll with several hundred accounts payable professionals, and we very recently published the results of this poll into a white paper working with the Institute of Financial Operations. And if you would like a copy of that white paper to see other people's pinch points and areas of pain, then please either get in touch with ourselves, ABBYY, or the Institute of Financial Operations, and you are able to download that white paper. So I've mentioned many times getting in touch with us to find out more information. There are data sheets available via our website. You can get in touch with us and interact with us through Twitter and LinkedIn. Or what you may wish to do is have a look at our YouTube channel, and on there you'll find lots of product demonstrations. There's also videos from our customers talking about previous installations of projects. And obviously, if you have any particular and specific questions, then please do get in touch with us via email. And just to finish off, I'd like to say, I think I mentioned this earlier on, but we're actually attending the Evolution Conference in Birmingham next week. So please do come and see us, and come and say hi and discuss any particular questions that you may have, or any particular challenges that you're facing, not only in the accounts payable field, but in any other data capture scenario. Thank you very much for listening, and I wish you all the best for the rest of your day. Thank you.